Hi all, so welcome to this channel once again, and today in this video session I'll discuss what is SQL and system naming conventions. So basically in IBMi when we execute our SQL, so there are two naming conventions which are available to us. One is the SQL one and the other one is the system one. So we can use either of them. There is no limitation to any one of them that we should only use system or we should use SQL. So we can use any of the naming conventions, but there are some differences between them and how they works actually and what they are basically for. We should must know those things when we are using these naming conventions. So let me give you the demo about that. So first of all, on IBMi machine I would do strSQL. So now you are on the SQL session, so you can now enter the or execute the SQL statements. So for example, let me show you. The current library list. So you can see this is the library list which is currently set on the system. So this is default, and you can see this is the current library. So let's do rpgle. So I have not put any library, any user library, irrespective. There is a current library which is already set, easy class 1. So let's say I'm going to search for a file and I'm going to look for data in a file. Select star from, let's say, pf1_d. Now you can see that I have not provided any library name, any schema name here, but still I am able to get the data. Let's see from where this file is coming. So basically this is from the current library which is in my library list. So I'm able to fetch the data from the library list. So let's go and check. Just do shift F1, and now first option, change session attributes, to check whether what naming convention is currently set. So you can see currently the naming convention is sys, that is system naming convention we are using. So the main important thing here is whenever we are using system naming convention, so either we should qualify the object if the library in which that object is there on the library list, so we should not qualify that, or either we should qualify it. So I can qualify this using both ways, like using dot, that is period, or using slash. So both ways are possible. So in both ways I can execute my select statement and I would be able to get the data from the file pf1_d which is present on my library list. Okay, so if I qualify it with the library either with slash or period, I would be able to get data, and if I do not qualify, even after that I would be able to get data. Now what about SQL then? If I do one, and I would shift F1 and then change it to SQL. Now if I try to run this, so I would seeing that qualified object name not valid. So in case of SQL we can only execute it like using period. So qualifying that library name or file name with the period, then only we would be able to execute. So the first main important difference here is that system naming convention allow us to use slash or dot both, but in SQL naming convention we can only use the dot, that is period. We cannot use slash. In that case we won't be able to execute our SQL statements, and we would be getting the error qualified object name, that is a file name or not valid. Now this was the first difference. Now the main important difference here is, let me show you. Now let's see if I'm trying to execute select star from this table. Now you can see the message pf1_d in easy class type star file not found. So basically currently it is searching in its own library of the user profile. So user profile, when user profile gets created, a library name with the same user profile name gets created. So in that case, if I use star SQL, that is SQL naming convention, then it go and searches for that file or that object in the user profile library. So that is easy class. Now it won't find that in the easy class. Since this file is present in easy class 1, so I have to qualify it with easy class 1. So by this way I am not able to find that in the library easy class 1, even that is on the library list. But if I change it to star sys, I would be able to get the data. So you can see in both the ways, the one difference here is, in the system naming convention I would be able to get the data from the file which is on the library list, so I don't need to qualify that with the library. But in the SQL naming convention I won't be able to get. So what are the main difference here? The first difference is, with system naming convention I can use slash or dot both as a qualifying separator, but in SQL I can only use dot. Another main important difference is, when we set system naming convention, then what happens when we search for or do the select on a query, what happens, the system searches for that file in the library list. So in case of system naming convention, it would search that object in the library list which is currently set on the system or in the session. But when we set the SQL naming convention, it won't consider that library list. It will search that in the library which is associated with your user profile, the same name as the user profile. Now this is the most important difference which one must know, and I know that many people among us only know that we can qualify it with slash or dot in the naming system naming convention, and in SQL naming convention we can only qualify it with dot. So no one or many of us don't know that the important or the main difference here is the search in the library list. That is, in system naming convention the SQL, that file gets searched in the library list, but in the SQL naming convention it won't get searched. So in that case you must have to qualify that file with your library name, and you have to use the separator dot period. So this was the system naming convention. So in this case the library list was searched, but once you set this SQL, you can see the library list is not searched. So in this case you have to always qualify this with the library name in which you are searching that file. So this was the most important difference which I want to highlight here. So whenever now from today, whenever we are going to use system or SQL naming convention, we must know, or we must be aware of, or we must ensure these things, that if SQL naming convention was set for now and we are using slash in that case, then our SQL won't get executed. So that has to be set with the system naming convention, then only we can execute that. But in case of SQL we only have to execute use the qualifier dot. But in case of So and we must have to qualify that. So if we do not qualify that, it won't go and search in the library list. So these are the important things which one must know whenever he was doing coding for this, for an SQL statements in their rpgle program or an SQL program. And we can set this naming convention from our rpgle program. What we need to do is to use the execute SQL in the program, and then we can set the option like we set for commit equals to star all or star none. The same way we set the naming convention as set option naming equals to either star sys, that is system, or star SQL. So this way we can write this line at top at the beginning of the program in our rpgle, or so that we can set the naming convention in the starting and then we can go in that way. So this is the point which one must know, and the difference between these two. So that's all in this video. Thank you and have a nice time.